Hello, students! I want you to think about something for a second. Why do we keep breathing continuously, even when we're fast asleep? Could we possibly survive without oxygen? In our previous explainers, we talked all about how food gets digested and absorbed into the blood. But what actually happens to that absorbed food? If food gives us energy, how exactly does the body get that energy out of it? Well, a lot of students actually think breathing and respiration are the exact same thing, but they're really, really different. And by the end of this explainer, that difference is going to be crystal clear. So, welcome to today's explainer. Today, we're unpacking one of the absolutely most critical life processes, respiration in human beings. I'm super excited to guide you through this because understanding this process is essentially understanding how your body powers itself every single second of every single day. All right, let's jump right in. Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover breathing versus respiration, map out the human respiratory system, look at how gas exchange works, break down aerobic and anaerobic respiration, and finally tackle some common student doubts. Section 1. Breathing versus respiration. Every single cell in your body needs energy to do its job. Whether your heart is continuously beating, your brain is thinking, your muscles are helping you run, or your kidneys are filtering blood, all of that takes energy. So where does it come from? It's released from your food through a process called respiration. Basically, respiration is the process where food, specifically glucose, gets broken down right inside your cells to release energy. And that energy doesn't just vanish. It gets stored in the form of ATP, or adenosine triphosphate, which we call the energy currency of the cell. This is exactly why respiration is a matter of life and death. It releases energy, helps you grow and repair, maintains your body heat, and keeps your organs running. Without it, our cells just literally wouldn't survive. Okay, so here's a really crucial point for your board exams. Breathing and respiration are absolutely not the same thing. Breathing is just the physical, mechanical process of bringing oxygen-rich air in, which is inhalation, and pushing carbon dioxide-rich air out, which is exhalation. It happens in the lungs, and it doesn't produce any ATP. But respiration, that's a chemical process. It happens deep inside your cells. It actually uses that oxygen to unlock energy from your food, and it produces ATP. To put it simply, breathing is the delivery system for oxygen, while respiration is the chemical factory that uses it. Section 2. The human respiratory system. Quick tip from me, definitely practice drawing and labeling this system because it shows up on board exams all the time. So, what's the actual path of the air when you take a deep breath? It enters through your nose or nostrils, travels into the nasal cavity, moves down through the pharynx, passes the larynx, that's your voice box, and heads down the trachea, which is the windpipe. From the trachea, it splits off into the bronchi, branches out even further into tiny tubes called bronchioles, and finally ends up in the alveoli inside the lungs. Let's look a little closer at a couple of these parts, starting with the nose. Your nose is actually doing 3 amazing protective jobs at once. It filters out dust using tiny hairs, it warms the air up, and it moistens it before it ever reaches your lungs. It's basically a built-in air purifier. Then there's the trachea. This tube is reinforced by these C-shaped cartilage rings. Why does that matter? Because those rings stop your windpipe from collapsing, so your airway stays safely open no matter what. Section 3. Gas exchange in the alveoli. So we have 2 lungs, and packed inside them are millions of these tiny balloon-like air sacs called alveoli. This is the main site where gas exchange happens, and they are perfectly designed for this job. They have super thin walls, a moist surface, an incredibly rich supply of blood, and a massive combined surface area. All these features working together mean that oxygen and carbon dioxide can diffuse back and forth incredibly fast. Right inside those alveoli is where the real magic happens. The oxygen diffuses through those super thin walls directly into your blood, and at the exact same split second, carbon dioxide diffuses out of the blood and into the alveoli so you can breathe it out. That freshly oxygenated blood then rushes away from the lungs to deliver oxygen to every single cell in your body. Section 4. Aerobic and anaerobic respiration. Okay, so what happens when that oxygen actually arrives at the cells? Well, it meets up with the glucose to release energy, which we call cellular respiration. And remember, the energy created doesn't just float away. It's captured and packed into ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Think about it. Just like you use physical currency, money, to buy things, your cells literally spend ATP to get their work done. That's exactly why we call it the energy currency of the cell.
Now, usually, this whole process happens with plenty of oxygen available. When oxygen is present, we call it aerobic respiration, the breakdown of glucose with oxygen to release energy. This happens in most plants and animals. It produces carbon dioxide, water, and a ton of ATP. Listen to this chemical equation because it's a massive one for your exams. Glucose plus oxygen gives you carbon dioxide plus water plus energy, which is ATP. Definitely lock that one in your memory.
But hey, what happens if oxygen just isn't available? Your cells still need energy, right? In those cases, cells release energy without oxygen, and we call this anaerobic respiration. A perfect example is what happens in your muscles during a really heavy workout. You're pushing hard, your oxygen supply can't keep up, so your muscle cells switch to anaerobic respiration. The problem? That process produces lactic acid. And that buildup of lactic acid is exactly what gives you those painful muscle cramps. Anaerobic respiration also happens in yeast, but there, the glucose is broken down into alcohol, carbon dioxide, and a little bit of energy. We actually take advantage of this process all the time to make bread, wine, and beer.
If we look at these two side by side, the differences are pretty clear. Aerobic respiration absolutely needs oxygen. Anaerobic doesn't. Aerobic produces a massive amount of ATP, while anaerobic produces very little. The final products of aerobic respiration are carbon dioxide and water, but anaerobic leaves you with either lactic acid in muscles or alcohol and carbon dioxide in yeast. And finally, aerobic is a standard for most plants and animals, while anaerobic is mainly used by yeast or by us when we're exercising really intensely. Having this comparison locked in your brain is going to be a game changer for your test. Section 5. Common doubts and questions.
All right, time for a quick rapid-fire review of the most common questions students ask about this. Let's start with a classic. Why do we breathe so much faster after running? Think about everything we just talked about regarding oxygen and energy. The answer is pretty straightforward. When you're running, your muscles are working in overdrive, and they demand a lot more energy. To get that extra energy out of the glucose, they need more oxygen. So your brain tells your lungs to breathe faster to pull in that vital oxygen for your muscle cells.
Okay, next up. Why do muscle cramps happen during heavy exercise? You're lifting or running, and bam, out of nowhere, you get a cramp. Why does that happen?
Well, it's because your oxygen supply just couldn't keep up with the demand. Your cells were forced into anaerobic respiration, and because of that, lactic acid started piling up in the muscle tissue. That lactic acid buildup is the direct biological cause of that cramping pain.
In the final big question for our review, why exactly do we call ATP the energy currency?
Well, just like we literally have to hand over cash to buy groceries, every single cell in your body has to spend ATP to get anything done. Thinking, moving, digesting, ATP is the ultimate universal battery that powers the whole shebang. So, we've walked through the whole incredible journey today, how you pull in oxygen, how it swaps places in the alveoli, and how it sparks the breakdown of glucose to create ATP. But honestly, that leaves us with one really huge question. Now that this oxygen is circulating and the energy is unlocked, how does the body actually transport all of these materials to literally every microscopic cell from your brain down to your toes? What is driving that massive transportation network? Well, to answer that, we're going to have to talk about blood, the heart, and double circulation, which is exactly what we're going to uncover in our next explainer. Thanks for hanging out, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next one.